Korins. Hello.
Hey.
We're back.
And caffeinated. That's good. All right, you ready?
One. No, you count.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, I'm Patrick Jager.
And I'm T. Ferguson. Welcome to season 2 of The Distillery.
Our theme for this season, creative communities collide. And what better place to start than to think about what it means to get back to normal.
Exactly. Like, how will the excitement for a vaccinated future collide with the actual realities of right now? What changes and shifts and new realities come out of this past year and a half of what's been going on, and what does our future look like for our respective and collective creative communities?
Yeah, I mean, that idea of the creative communities and how broad we're trying to be this season really excites me. I mean, nothing makes me more excited than to have this time with you and our guests, and we're back.
We're back. Yeah, and for any of you that don't remember how this goes, we have 3 rounds. The now round, we kick things off with the topic of the moment. In this case, a stat and a data point that we're going to really dive into. Then we'll deep dive into a 2-on-1 conversation with one of our guests. And then the next round, where we're talking about what the future looks like for all of us.
For any of you that have watched our show before, you know that we start with a poll. And in last season, we focused on a poll that we had pre-polled our audience to see their thoughts. This year, T had a great idea to switch that up a little bit. T, what are we doing this year?
So this is all about stats and data that is currently being discussed or something that we feel is topical and needs to be addressed. Patrick, I think you have some interesting things to open up.
I do. There was a Forbes article recently called 5 Stats Employers Need to Know About Remote Workforce. And if we're talking about back to normal, remote or not remote is probably the top of everybody's list. So I'm going to put these up on the screen as we say them, and then we will identify which ones we think are the most interesting. And that way we can also segue into our guests and find out what they think. So here they go. What do these mean to you? 74% of professionals expect remote work to become standard. 97% of employees don't want to return to the office full time. 61% of employees prefer being fully remote. Remote work is the biggest draw for top talent. And the last one, benefits have become more important as we try to recruit new people to our workforce. All right, those are the 5 stats that I have. T, what'd you think?
97% of people that don't want to return to the office full time. I get that. I also find the idea that working remotely can draw better talent. And that we're looking at so many big, specifically tech companies, which are, leaders in a lot of things, saying, look, you don't need to come back to the office at all. And if that's a perk for people and that gets them even better talent than they're already able to acquire, I mean, that could be a game changer.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the interesting thing is it really depends on what you're in, obviously. Like if you work at a museum, and you need to be at the museum. If you work in a theater, and we're going to talk about that in depth, that becomes a challenge, remote work. But if you're an editor, I mean, edit pools have been remote for a long time, and you're right. I think there is something to be said about coming together for bonding and that sense of closeness and real teamwork. And I think there are some things that have not worked as well. I'm gonna get on my bully pulpit here for 1 second. I've really been frustrated about the fact that a lot of business decorum, when you're not together, has slipped away. People aren't responding to things in the same way. People aren't engaging the same way. There is a bluntness maybe when you are far apart that you wouldn't have if you were in an office. So I don't know. I'm one of those that would like to be part-time back at the office.
Yeah. Well, think about how long it took all of us to get used to typical office decorum. I mean, some people still struggle with that in face-to-face scenarios. So I think a lot of people too in this past year are maybe reveling a little in their freedom or their ability to have some agency over their days. So I think it's going to take a lot of work for everybody, and finding that balance of somewhere in between, because I agree this hybrid approach makes sense. But in a world where everybody's doing their own version of hybrid, like what does that look like? How could it be chaos? I'm really interested to see what that shapes up as.
I want to have you help us introduce our guest, but first, one other thing that they said, the last stat about benefits, I think that's really fascinating because you're seeing that everywhere. $4,000 signing bonuses at retail establishments to get people in. There was some huge benefits draw to get casino workers. Even to get a vaccine shot in Ohio, you can win $1 million. So there's all this incentive now to get people to participate and do. And I do think benefits, it hurts and it hits a bottom line, obviously, at some point for a business. But if you're not having to pay overhead of offices and benefits,
how do you redirect the money? And
exactly.
I think it's hard. And I'll also say one other point, because I'm dealing with this right now with a particular client. And if you're in a space, much to your point about, if you're an editor, if you're on Broadway, if you're at a museum, you're in a space where you've always done this work and you and your team are used to working together and are now just separated, it's much easier to find your footing. When you're starting something brand new and you're bringing teams together for the first time, that is a really unique experience. And I think that, that's the bonding moment that really sets the tenor of a team from the very beginning. So I'm interested to see how startups and how smaller companies that are really in the ramp up phase handle all of this, because some of the best talent is ready to work from home, but also could be a really big get for a small company.
Yeah,
great point. Our guests may have something to add. I'm sure they will. You want to kick it off?
Sure. So first up, we have award-winning Broadway and mega event production designer David Korins. David's been awarded an Emmy Award, Lortel Award, Obie Award, 2 Drama Desk Awards, 3 Henry Hughes Awards, and 3 Tony Award nominations. But it's what he's known for that I find amazing. If you've seen Hamilton or Dear Evan Hansen or shows of Bruno Mars, Kanye West, Lady Gaga, or watch Grease Live or watch What Happens Live, you've been immersed in David's work. And the best fun fact we maybe ever had, 2 years when David was in high school, he was a backup singer for Barry Manilow. David, can you sing us your intro?
I cannot.
Okay, all fine.
Next, we'd like to welcome Karen Horne, whom I've known for many years. She and I have attended numerous Hollywood shindigs together and have had lots of fun. She has been recognized as a diversity and inclusion pioneer and recently joined WarnerMedia, where she's the Senior Vice President of Equity and Inclusion. Prior to that, she spent over a decade at NBC Universal, where she was Senior Vice President, Programming, Talent Development, and Inclusion for NBC Entertainment and Universal Television Studios. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Let's see, your fun fact is that your alter egos are Martha Stewart and Ina Garten?
Yeah, I like to party. What can I say?
Perfect. I was
And finally, our special guest that we'll be speaking to during our 2-in-1 segment. We're honored to have my friend Nancy Glass with us today. Nancy is another award-winning panelist and is known as a brilliant journalist, producer, and humanitarian. I've had the great honor of knowing Nancy for many years, and I have to say she is one of the most passionate and blunt people I know in the business, and those are traits I very much admire. We have a lot to talk about today, from her success with Glass Entertainment Group to the diversification she's undertaken during the pandemic, a pivot that not many others have done, and she's done it amazingly. Fun fact, Nancy recently played a 1980s version of herself on the ABC sitcom, The Goldbergs. I'm hoping we have that clip.
No, you don't. I mean, I don't know. Here's the thing. They said to me, would you play Nancy Glass? And I said, weirdly enough, I look just like her, only fatter.
I can't wait to see the hair. It's the hair that I'm excited about.
They didn't do my full Linda Evans puff out, but it was really fun. They're really nice.
So I'm going to go through these stats with you. And again, these are 5 stats from a Forbes article entitled 5 Stats Employers Need to Know About the Remote Workforce. And since remote is probably the top of mind for people as we think about back to normal, these make sense. So here are the stats. All right, everybody, who wants to start? What stat popped out to you for either good or bad?
Well, we always offer benefits. You know, in our freelance world, we don't have freelancers, very rarely. We've always offered benefits because I don't like the stomach ache of people having to look for work. I'd rather build our own and roll them over from show to show. As far as working remotely, what's missing, and everybody will say the same thing, is that fortuitous, a thing that happens that leads to more creativity. So while I think that what your stats are right for conventional offices, I think for all of us, I'm going to let my employees work, remotely as they want to, as they can. But I think a lot of people really want to be with other creative people.
For me, I started WarnerMedia 4 days before the quarantine happened, and we started our department during this. And then, we are taping this on the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder, and working in inequity and inclusion. I think the rest of our company, if not the industry, woke up and realized, wait, there's systemic racism that we've benefited from. Can you guys go fix it now? So we've built our entire team remotely. And what I learned is that in many of the programs and initiatives that I've tried to set up to be very inclusive, they were in fact quite exclusive, because if you can't come to Los Angeles, you couldn't be a part of that. And we now have interns who are able to work in our company who live in Wisconsin because they can afford to do that, where they couldn't have come to Los Angeles. So what we've learned in this working remote capacity is that you can be productive and work remotely. But I agree with you, Nancy. I think that there's a lot missing. There's no water cooler conversations that are happening. There's no let's just bump into someone in a hallway and have a conversation about something that leads to something else. And quite frankly, I miss being around people. I want to be out of this house. I want to be around other people. I am looking forward to going back into an office, but a lot of my team and our staff will work remotely going forward, or at least a hybrid of that.
I guess I'll add to it. I didn't even want to put pants on with buttons and zippers, so I don't want to go back to the office at all. I actually put clothes on today because I thought, at least from the shoulder up, I should look okay. But I think that I'm afraid to ask my employees whether they want to come back to the office or not, because I think the answer is going to be at best once a week. But I think Nancy hit it on the head, especially for what I do. I miss the scale of like my big, huge whiteboard where we could sort of sloppily throw ideas, best idea wins, and now I find myself kind of sketching before meetings on an iPad and digitally sending things to people. And it's like the muscularity of that kind of thing and the scale of it is really, I think, hamstringing the process. Although when I say that, I sort of like float that out to my employees, they all kind of go, no, we get it. We love those sketches. It's fine. And I think that's their way of saying, don't make us put pants on and it's going to be okay. So I think like for us, probably there's a hybrid in our future, but we can't do really what we do without being in person. I think like there's the design process and the creative direction process, and then there's the doing it. And I think, we're nothing without the doing it. We're just a bunch of people talking in a room.
No, I tell everybody I haven't worn a button or a zipper in so long. I feel like I'm Amish. But I'm really happy today because you gave me a reason. You gave me a reason to put on lipstick. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, you're putting on hard clothes today? Yeah.
Right. Shoes, heels are just a thing of the past. They all just
Oh my God, I know.
It's so funny. I'm actually wearing like my fancy boots just because it makes me feel good today.
Right.
Yeah, Patrick was like, what's all that clumping around? I was like, it's my fancy boots. Can we talk about like the word and the idea of quote unquote normal is super polarizing for people? I'd love to hear what you guys think about that when everyone's talking, like we've tentatively titled this episode Back to Normal ? because that's sort of where all these conversations have led. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to think.
Well, in my work, I don't want to be back to normal. I don't think normal was working, quite frankly. I think, I've spent 20 years trying to convince people that different is not a risk, that being equitable and having different voices in their writers' rooms or on their sets or behind the camera will only make our business better. The normal part of our industry benefits from having guys who look the same. And I have really tried to spend the better and the most meaningful part of my career trying to champion those voices that have historically been underrepresented in our industry. So normal for me, I've never liked normal. I wanted, I always want to buck the normal system, if you will. And so I hope we don't get back to normal. I think that we're finding that we are very flexible, people in this industry, and that we can do a lot. And hopefully that means the stories that we are telling and the people who get to tell them.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what normal is. I completely agree with what you're saying, Karen. I mean, it's funny. I think it's such I hate to say this, an LA attitude that everything has to be so homogenized. There, we're in Philadelphia, where people always say to us, "What time is it where you are?" I'm like, "It's 1982. What do you think it is?" We once did a show, and this is sort of I guess a model for what you're talking about. We did a show, and it was raining, and the network in LA said, "Why is it raining on the show?" And I said, "Because it rains in America." And you don't know what America looks like. If you have a development department and you just have a bunch of white guys, you are screwed. You don't understand your audience at all. So I definitely agree with that. I don't know. There is no normal in our business. Every time we think we know what's happening, the whole world changes. So, but I agree with David. I want to be around those people. We have hilarious meetings every night at 5 they start at 5. Our management meetings, there's about 11 of us. And by 5:22, the gays have taken over and it's gone into God knows what direction. And that's really fun, but I need to see my pizza person.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even really know what's behind the question of, are we going back to normal? Because I have no concept of I don't even remember what normal was as like the token white cisgendered male on this panel. I will say that I recognize that because of a million fucked up reasons, I have profited from that. And I think that the last 16 months have taught everyone to shut up and just listen and be open to what should have been normal. And I feel like there's are we going to get back to business as normal? Are we going to be people as normal? Are the different levels of how people interact going to be normal? And I feel like the entire slate is going to be washed clean, especially in live events. I mean, theater, film, television. I always feel like in general, they're fairly progressive with regard to, America. But I got to tell you, there's a reckoning happening, and it's a long time coming. And I, for one, welcome it. And it is very serious. So there will be no normal.
Yeah, I think, our industry always thinks, because we tend to be very liberal voting people and, progressive in our acceptance of what, how we choose to acceptance is bullshit. Can I curse on this?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Sorry, acceptance is bullshit.
I think
anyway.
they said you have to curse. That's like part of the pre-conversation.
But I think, when we look at it, the industry has the financial industry had people of color who oversaw $1 billion funds way before there was a person of color who could greenlight a movie or a TV show, So we've always thought that we're so progressive, but really we are so far behind because we're in a new, a relatively new industry that that really, has profited and benefit from, the systems that it was built on. And so I think getting back to normal, if we go back to that whole thing, and it's more than just equity and race and racism. It's also how we treat people. It's no more bullies. Like bullies are hopefully a thing of the past. We want people to. I think we've all been through so much this past year and a half that no one should have ever had to tolerate, and no one wants to tolerate assholes anymore. There, I cursed twice in one thing. So,
The swear jar will be passed.
okay, good.
And also, it
paying
comes
for
in
my son's
threes, so you
college.
owe us one. It's like,
That's right. Well, I want to stay, David, I want to stay on your world, because I think for so many of us that don't work in live events the way you do, there were ways to pivot. Yeah, all of us downsized. I mean, I lost 2/3 of my clients at the beginning of the pandemic, but I think most of us here, we did have work. Your entire industries, plural, just shut down. So when you think about COVID and the pivot you've had to take during COVID, and that pivot might be a mental pivot as much as it is a economic pivot or a professional pivot, what are the things that you walk away from this last chapter thinking are kind of more permanent changes?
Well, my company, we do probably, I'd say like half live events and half other things. So the other things bucket was actually pretty robust and okay. I would say that out of deference to the amazingly talented, crazy, artistic unicorns that I collected over the last 20 years, I tried to keep as many of them employed and, went basically bankrupt doing it. So now there's like a ramp up happening again. And I feel like it's a semi-loaded question, because in a way, what I've learned is that it's kind of going to be more of the same. I feel like 10 years ago, you couldn't talk to a brand or an institution about an experience or an activation without them being like, yeah, maybe we could kind of like put that into like an advertising bucket. And then I think 5 years ago, people understood that like the right people seeing something or interacting with it kind of got a lot of eyeballs on a brand or a show or a project. And now I think I subscribe to the roaring 20s of it all, unless there's another pandemic and we're all going to crap out. But I feel like we're going to spend another 18 months ramping back up. And then the thing that I was feeling before the pandemic is going to be true, which is that this thing that I call the new live entertainment is everything. I was saying, I think to you guys last night, there isn't an artist, a brand, an institution, a show, a project who wants to do a thing straight down the middle. Like you can't have a piece of theater. It has to be an immersive, environmental piece of theater. You can't have a rock concert. It has to be in a rock concert experience launched on multi-platforms. You can't just open a movie without a special event. And I sort of sit right at the nexus of kind of brand, voices, activation, and live events. And I just think it's going to be gasoline on that fire. If you're not thinking about how to capture these activations, put them out into the world in like an omnidirectional way, I think people are leaving money on the table. They're leaving eyeballs on the table. And I think COVID has taught us really two things. Number one, we all now ingest so much more information online. Even with the screen fatigue, we're just like obsessively looking at crap. And then the second thing is we are dying to be told, put down your phone and come enjoy this thing, right? In person, live, visceral, with people. And I think the combination of those things is going to make the output of experiences massive, massive. If I was going to invest in one entertainment sector, I would say that.
Nancy, you've had to do somewhat of the same. I mean, a lot of your production brethren are kind of single bucketed or maybe two bucketed, but you are on multitudes of buckets because it seems to me the same thing holds true for you, that nobody wants just TV.
Well, that's true. And also, I'm pretty much a nervous Jew. I mean, I always think I'm going to be living on the street
Same.
or box.
Same. nervous Jew. Yeah.
Cardboard box. So I got a really nice one in my closet. So anytime I see a way to pivot, I go. So yeah, we've really beefed up our podcast division, or we have millions of downloads on our second one. We have 7 podcasts scheduled for Wondery. We have 22 shows right now. What we've done is we've dug in. My agent says she's never seen more development in her life. Everybody's developing. We also pivoted to the exercise space. Oddly enough, we are part of a new fitness startup, which uses AI to revolutionize strength training. See how I got the log line down? And it'll be announced in, I guess, about 6 weeks. I'm buying a game show IP. So yeah, we've really doubled down. We're working hard. I didn't let anybody go, no matter what, because I won't. That's a lot of people. And David, you know, when you say the thing about the unicorns, yeah, I have such great people. I love them so much. And I also know that the best of the best of the best of them will be really upset if I let go any of the others. It makes them all nervous and guilty and everything. So we kept everybody on, and we just dug in and said to people, do what you have to do. Do volunteer work. I don't care. Do something and we'll pay you. So it's been a tough time. It's been very self-reflective. What can we do? How do we do it better? How do we pivot? And we've dug in. The bad part of it is that the networks don't always compensate you for the cost of what's going on right now. And that's really been hard. I mean, I don't know, David, if you get paid to keep your people on by networks. We do in some cases, and in some we do not, and we have to just do it.
We were left kind of out to dry. We got some of that PPP money, but the truth is I lost more people because of like the great COVID diaspora of people saying you know, I just think that like not all 2 pandemics are created equal. And I feel like New York became pretty rough. We all lost our sense of humor in a profound way. And anyone that was kind of scraping by got out, and anyone that could afford to get out got out. And so, you know, I was like, I guess now I have a workforce that's scattered across the country.
How do you feel? Let's talk about us as people for a second, but you know, we're all sit inside this creative space, and we talk a lot about business, but we're all humans in this. And you know, throughout the year, we've had to stay creative. We'd have to stay motivated. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like for each of you, and also in that, what you sort of learned and you want to maintain and you want to really hold on to as we're breaking out of it.
You know, I will say it's been tough, you know, because I know people who were affected by the pandemic. My sister's husband died early on in the pandemic. They live in New York, and you know, people who've been affected by it. And then again, you know, with the George Floyd murder, and you add to that, you know, the racial reckoning that you know happened, you know, over the summer, and you know, hopefully continues to happen. You know, it's been rough. You know, we've all personally been affected by the pandemic. I have personally been affected by the pandemic. And then you add on top of that, the racial reckoning that has happened in our country. And working in a role that we do, our job is to kind of check in on our employees and make sure that they're okay. And they're not, they haven't been okay. So, and I haven't been okay. This has been a really tough year. You know, I have young adult children who are very socially active, and it's been hard on them as well. And, you know, making sure I'm okay, making sure my family's okay, making sure my employees are okay. It's a lot. And, you know, I think I look at the resilience, and I'm happy the way we've all gotten through this, and I'm hopeful, because I am the internal optimist. I am hopeful that the other side of this will be something where we'll be stronger and better from it. But it's really, you know, I can say personally, it's been, you know, a tough year, and I think everybody else probably feels that way as well.
I think Karen's right. I lost my father-in-law. I lost a dear friend. And I am, you know, Patrick, I am psychotically optimistic. Nothing is going to get me down. And I'm here to cheer up everybody. I think the fact that we were all home when this racial reckoning happened made it hit even harder. We were home. We had to listen. And I have to say that on top of everything else was so devastating. And what everybody learned and, from each other and from what happened. So those two things happening at the same time made it very tough. What I always say is, you just have to be grateful for what you have, and you have to keep your ears open and your mind open, be ready to change, be ready to pivot, and be grateful for what we are left with.
Yeah, I mean, listen, someone asked me a while ago, how are you doing? Like scale of 1 to 10. And I said, 1 to 10. I feel like every day we're all a version of 1 to 10, Yeah. And, I agree with what both of you guys said. With regard to like the pivot, it's been kind of like a much longer amount of time than I think any of us truly anticipated. And I think we all probably have a similar mentality, which is like, tell me I'm going to go run a mile and I know how to get from here to there, but tell me it's going to be a mile and then it's going to wind up being 14 miles. That'll really mess you up. And I think, I've gone through, as I said, the 1 to 10s. I first allowed myself to get like incredible. Like first I was like, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to make a list of people I'm going to contact every day. And then like, a month later, I was like, one person was left on the list that I gave a crap about. Right. And then, I went everything from like gain 10 pounds to like got in the best shape of my life. Right. Like everything in between. So I feel like the pivot is for people that think that we need to be accomplishing something or doing something in this moment. And then I think it has to be okay that when you see those people after the pandemic, whatever that means, we have to all be gentle, right? Some people are going to have like lost all their hair. Some people are going to have like gained, like, grown their hair. People are going to be fat, skinny, like crazy, depressed. And I think we all have to be gentle because there's that thing of like, even in the regular times, you never know what someone's going through. Well, now we all know, I have 2 kids as well, 15 and a half, 11 and a half. Like I'm looking at them every day, like, is this okay? They seem to be, knock on wood, like thriving. And then at other moments, I'm like, my 11-year-old started this thing, not owning a phone and never being on a screen. And now she's like doing school on a camera, like 8 hours a day. Like it's the indelible impact on this is yet to be known on anyone, even the people who are the most privileged and the most insulated. And I just feel like we all have to be careful and gentle.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, if there's a takeaway for our audience, it's be kind to yourself. T and I started this because we were starting a whole different business together, and the pandemic hit, and we were like, well, that's out the window. And now I feel like shit. And what do we do? And this was literally catharsis for us. So thank you for being part of our catharsis. But on top of that, I don't think we give each other enough grace. So I applaud you all for saying that. I think that's really important. With that, I'm gonna keep this going. I'm gonna move really quickly into our 2-on-1. Nancy Glass, you are on the hot seat for about 5 minutes. You ready?
Oh God, you really want to put people to sleep?
You know what I hate about this, Nancy? You're so shy. I'm gonna have to pull stuff out.
I am.
Okay, all right. Well, for those of you who don't know, I wanted, when I started my business, the first person that came to me and said, I want to applaud you, I want to be here for you, I want to do something for you, was you. And so I've, for many, many years, had you up on a shelf of greatness. So now everybody gets to share on that. And I'm done with the gushing. Now we're going to do the questions. So you started off as a journalist, and I remember you very distinctly as a journalist. But when you made the pivot to get into production, it was at a time that not a lot of women own their own production companies. And you've always kind of been this sassy, I can do what you can do and I can do it better person. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of got from there to here.
I was a single mother without a job. That's my answer. I was a single mother without a job. I needed to earn money. I didn't want to work in local television. I thought, I have ideas. I'll start a company. What an idiot. I didn't know anything. I didn't know. I had The only thing I can say is, and forgive me for this, being talent, a frog on a leash can be talent. But I believe that the reason people hired me was because I got along with people. That's what I found out. Because now that I work with talent, 0 to 3 episodes and they become monsters. But anyway, I had these great relationships. I was always a writer and producer because I was this funny looking person, in a time when there was this blonde ideal. I sure was not that. So I was a writer and producer. That's how I succeeded. And so I just started selling ideas. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know anything about business per se. When they asked me for an insurance certificate, I didn't know what that was. But the shows worked and I worked really hard. And as far as being a woman, people just dismissed me completely, always. They always did. And especially because when you joke around a lot or, but you just persevere. You just work harder than everybody else, get along with people and do your job, and I'm really proud of I built the kind of, I grew up in the business where people threw staplers at you and chairs and called you stupid. And can I swear? This is a bad one. I worked for somebody who would always say to me, I just see you as unfuckable. You just are. I mean, that's what I would put up with all throughout my career. And so I created a place where people never get talked to that way, where they never feel insecure or, I hope not, and maybe I'm not being realistic, but that was really important to me. So little by little, it just built and it just happened. I would say there was no grand plan. I'm not that clever and I'm terrible at business.
Do you have a mantra, or do you subscribe to any particular ethos for what you want to represent as a company and as a woman?
I always tell my kids are like, we're going to meditate. I'm like, here's your mantra. I'm in it for the money. I'm in it for the money. No, I don't. I know. I'm not that lofty.
You've had a lot of fun projects that, do you have a favorite?
You can ask me my favorite child. What are you talking about? Well, no, I do not have a favorite. I like everything we do. There's nothing I don't like.
We're going into
But there are things I won't do. I won't do something that ethically, bothers me or feels icky.
You have helped groom a lot of people, and there are a lot of people in this business that feel like if I give away my secrets, I might not get what I need. You clearly do not subscribe to that.
No.
Where does that come from?
Because there's enough money in it for everybody. There's enough room for everybody. I just don't believe in that. I think it comes from the fact that when I started out and I was I'm very old, and I was the only woman anywhere, the only girl when I started out. And the only people who were ever nice to me were other women who were in there. And I learned, be nice to people, be generous. You never, ever know. I will tell you a thing. I was, a funny story. I was with my executive producer when I was a reporter in chasing Nazis in Canada. Whole nother Oprah there. But anyway, so I'm very chatty and friendly and nice. And at the end of the trip, and it had been very scary, and we had dealt with gun-toting thugs and all this stuff. And he said to me, can you stop being nice to everybody? If you live to be 150 years old, you'll never see any of these people again. Why do you need to be nice to everyone? And I looked at him and I said, when did I marry you? And the funny thing is, I'm now married to him.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great punchline.
Are we done with me now?
Wait. One more. So tell us a little bit about what's next for you. What's the new big thing you're working on? And also maybe this is a twofer. Sorry, I'll sneak it in. Do you want to, or do you have plans on being on camera or hosting anymore?
No, never. There's my answer. No, never. I don't want to do that. First of all, oh my God, I don't want to read that. I don't want to read the social media. The Goldbergs was a lot of fun. Done. No, never. And plus, I always feel it's really sad when on-air people want to, they have that. I don't think about the past. I dream of the future. I like everything.
No, I think that's a great answer, and it helps pivot us, I think, to our next category. So I'm going to give the first next to you, which is, what does the next look like for you guys? What is the next chapter?
Every time I think I know the answer to that, the whole world changes.
Hmm.
I don't know. I do think that it is really that the diversity issue is so important. That is a big push for us. That is what I would say as a company. It's a huge push for us. But as far as projects, I mean, who knew that podcasts were going to be so big? Who knew that, I mean, it's really hard to know. I would throw that to David and Karen.
The next for me is the same as it's been for me. And it's really making us nicer people. Like you said, Nancy, I think it's easier to be nice to people. And I think you get more from them when you're nice to them. There is a method to my madness of treating people very nicely. It's really just to make WarnerMedia the best in the industry in terms of pipeline programs and equity and inclusion. That's what my next is, for the foreseeable future. But also, what I would say for me too, it's balance. I think this year I've learned that balance is important. It's I took a week and went away by myself, no family, no work, and it's finding that balance, and that is what's next, and making sure that I continue to do that, to make sure that I recharge me in order to help other people.
I feel like, well, first of all, I agree with both of the ladies. I feel like it's easier to be nice to people and not be kind of cagey and mysterious about ideas, because I feel like we all trade in the currency of ideas, but they're a dime a dozen. And like how you execute them is everything, right? So I've always felt like it's nice to kind of like yes and somebody and like kind of just hear yourself talk about it, share an idea, and then you never know where you're going to find another business partner, another collaborator somewhere. With regard to what's next, I guess for me, I'm feeling like this Sisyphusian version of let me get back first to where we kind of were. I don't mean with regard to any of the inclusion, racial diversity, or any of that stuff. I mean, I had 27 projects running and open around the world, and every single one of them closed in like 6 days. So now Broadway's reopening, events are reopening. I'm doing this immersive Van Gogh thing that's about to open in 5 days, and I feel like that's kind of the first big event in New York. It's like a 70,000.
David, I'm going to the one in LA in January. I can't wait.
Oh,
I'm
great.
so excited for it. I couldn't get tickets until January.
I mean, it's weird. It's like, it's such an interesting thing. I feel like people are like, what's up with this Van Gogh thing? And I kind of feel like here's a guy who struggled with depression, loneliness, isolation, died a poor man, sold one painting in his life. And if you know anything about art history, there's something there for you. If you know nothing, but you like, ooh, pretty sunflowers, there's something there for you. And I kind of feel like we've all just gone through some version of isolation, right? Some version of misunderstanding ourselves and the world. And so I kind of feel like right artist, right time. But to me, that thing signals, it's like a massive footprint in New York. And it's like the first big live event. And it kind of is like the prologue to all the Broadway shows opening and people kind of creeping out of our little apartments. Who knows what the hell's going to work? I mean, you're right. Whoever thought like the podcast thing as an example would be, like rocket fuel. So I'm excited to like just get the things back up and running and see what happens with regard to audiences coming back, how that feels. I mean, I got to tell you, I went out Monday and Tuesday of last week for kind of business things, and I was exhausted. Like, I don't know how we're going to ask people to like get dressed up and go to the theater and to dinner. Like, it's going to be, we have to like get our muscles back, I know.
It's not... people are asking to like go to lunch. I'm like, lunch? What is that? I'm like, I don't
No.
Lunch.
I mean, no, I need like an IV after going to lunch. Like, it's very difficult. It's like challenging. Cancel the rest of my day.
But I can't wait to come back for the theater and the live
Me
experiences.
neither.
I cannot wait.
Me
And for
too.
other people to make my martinis for me. I'm just
I
there.
Well, you know what? It's one of those interesting things about like the theater, for all of its like craziness. I think the one thing that we did was say, we can't do a hybrid. We can't do 50%. We can't do, we said, we can't socially distance. You can't do like that scene where you kiss each other. You can't be in a pit playing an instrument. So I think even though we were like the first ones down and we'll be the last ones up, I think part of people, and I don't love a lot of theater, to be frank. I have to say, like, part of
What?
why, yeah, I people are always asking me, like, what should you go see? And I did say most of it is bad, to be really honest. Like, it's not that I don't appreciate the effort, and it's not that I don't love the culture of it, because I do, but I think most theater is not very good. I know, surprise.
A whole nother conversation. I grew up in theater. I grew up in Jersey, and the Paper Mill Playhouse was my backyard. And so I grew up in the theater, but I hear what you're saying, but that's a whole, like, how does theater, wow, that's fascinating.
Well, I feel like, when someone says, hey, can you recommend this person for a job, or can you recommend a show? I take it very, very, very seriously. It's a reflection on you. And I'm like, there's like a handful of things that I'm like, this, I could tell you, go see this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but I do think that theater represents, because of its closeness, like the lack of, social distancing and all that it represents culturally. I think it in a way, if we can pull off the return, it means that the restaurants are okay, the cruise ships are okay, the live events are okay, the museums are okay, and then we're going to be okay. So, no pressure.
I don't think cruise ships were ever okay. So hopefully, I don't think they ever were okay. But
well, there's that. But that's also a breakout conversation.
Yeah, it is. I absolutely love theater. I would go see anything, but there's been some, I'm sorry, maybe I'm the only person who hated Mamma Mia.
No, you're not.
No,
No, you're not.
And,
no, you're not.
and can we discuss Cats? If T.S. Eliot was in the audience for that show, he would say, who wrote this crap?
I'm not going to put an opinion on either of those two properties.
You
But I
can.
would just say that you just said you hated like two of the longest running shows in the
I
theater.
know.
Which brings me to my point of like, I just don't want to recommend things that I think are meh.
I know, I get it, I know, but I can't wait to get back to theater, because what
Me
happened
neither. I'm so excited.
concerts for me, because I always say to my kids, that will never happen again. What you're
Right.
looking at now will never happen again.
Live sports for me. Can we get a Giants game in, please?
All of it. All of it.
Ah, goodness. Should we? I want to, as we're kind of keeping an eye on time. I think this whole next conversation is often really punctuated well about like, how do we talk to the next and future generations? Especially about things like uncertainty. We know, like, we thought we knew the uncertainty of the industry, but like now we have a very clear understanding of the uncertainty of like society as a whole. And that can be scary sometimes. So I think I'd love to hear what sort of like recommendations or words of wisdom for the younger crowds, and for the kids that are just, graduating school and that are going through this now and need the inspiration to kind of tap into these areas and creative areas of the industry, so that we can have more diversity, we can have more inclusion, we can have more young inspired artists. What do you think?
I'll jump in, because I live with the next generation. I have a 25 and almost 21-year-old, and what they're certain that nothing is certain. They know they don't expect the same things that I grew up expecting. They don't want the same things. Like, I look at 401k and job security. They look at sustainability, social consciousness, vacation time, when they're looking for things. And I think when I learned from my kids, I learned from them about the things, and quite frankly, I've changed a lot of my thinking because of the things I've learned from them, and have given those things to my job, brought them into my job, and saying like, the Gen Zers who are inheriting our industry demand this, they want this, they do this. And you know, I think for me, like I've said to the people who work with me, the writers that I champion, the talent that I work with, bring your authentic selves. That's what we want. We want your authentic voices. We want to know what's important to you. We want to know the stories you want to tell. We want to know what's important to you, what's not. And so I think the next generation is probably more in tune with a lot of things than we often give them credit for. And quite frankly, I'm learning from them.
And I have pre-people also that age, and they are much more socially aware. I agree with you. They're just so much better on those issues than any of us are. The vacation thing, listen, snowflakes, I don't want to hear about that at your job interview, but that's what they do. But I would say that there are more ways to get noticed. You know, I used to say, be an intern, because we groom our own. But the truth is, now you can use Snapchat to get noticed. Now you can use Twitter. Now you can use, I mean, there's a million ways to get noticed, and people do. And when I always say to them, when someone tells you no, find somebody else.
But get noticed for the right things, for God's sake. I mean, like, please,
Oh my God.
don't get noticed for the things like, you know, yeah.
You know, and I appreciate your question about, like, you know, there's so much uncertainty. That's true, but I feel like there are some things that are very, very, very certain. And I think we can all agree that, like, one is hard work. To me, like, when I think about my kids, who I think are a little bit younger than both of yours, I'm like, there isn't a titan in any industry. I don't care what kind of God-given talent you have that didn't say, like, I pulled 1 billion all-nighters, or worked more hours, or I was the first person to the gym and the last person to leave, or whatever it is. And I'm like, get me on my soapbox about hard work, because yes, there are more places to be noticed. And yes, there's like more optionality, if that's even a word, everywhere. But to me, it's like, you're not going to get shit done if you're not doing it hard and long. Like, it's just not going to happen. And so to me, it's like, you're going to find your lane, you're going to find your passion, you're going to find a way to, like, push that out into the world. But that's the biggest thing about, like, the next generation for me is, I was definitely not the most talented person. I didn't, like, pick up a pencil and try and draw until I was like 23 years old. I don't know anything about any of that stuff. I didn't even grow up going to the theater or any of that stuff. But, like, when I found my lane, I put my head down and made up those years a lot. And like that, people don't understand what hard work really feels like. And I'm always like, I mean, I said to my daughter the other day, picture the biggest boat in the entire world. Like, picture the biggest boat, like it fills the Hudson River. And then I was like, now picture a boat 20 times bigger than that. And she was like, oh, mind blown, right? And I was like, that's the hard work thing. Like, picture as hard as you could possibly work. And then there's another gear, and people don't get that. Like you said, snowflakes, it's like, forget.
Well, you know, it's funny because I always say to my kids, you know, you guys went to the best schools in the world. I'm a high functioning illiterate. It doesn't matter. All I do is work hard. You know, what was it? Melvin Van Peebles used to say, early to bed, early to rise, work like a dog and advertise.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love it. It's great.
I thought it was dress more British, speak more Yiddish.
No, think Yiddish. No, it's dress British, think Yiddish.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so I think this is, I have a 20-year-old. I'm right there with you. Especially because it's like, I'm gonna get famous on TikTok. No, you're not. But one last question from me is, you know, crystal ball, we all are looking for that next lane, that thing that is the untapped, or that I'd love to get a prediction from each of you on what should we be anticipating in the next. Karen, I'm gonna start with you. In your world, you know, right now it's so fraught with what is the now, but what do you see as the next?
Look, I think it's virtual. I think, and I hate to say this, David, as you do these live stuff, but for, I think in television and film, the virtual world, digital virtual stuff is, if you can marry your creative with your engineering ability, I think you will go a long way in this next iteration of what this industry will be. When you look at The Mandalorian, that's all done virtually. So I think it's a virtual production stuff is where it's going.
Whenever I think about the next, I always kind of go like, well, who's done the next before us? And it's like Uber fixed taxi drivers, right? They fixed taxis. They did it better because they did it better. And Netflix fixed the experience of going to the cinema. I hate to say that, I know a lot of people, but like, so you find that white space. To me, I'm gonna like poke for a second a little bit what Karen said. I think for sure there's gonna be a lot of virtual stuff. To me, the headset virtual thing is isolating and sad. And it has like a real timeline on it. But I do think augmented AR, AI for sure. But I'm gonna just like be like, I'm gonna hold the flag for Live. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a combo platter of technology, human convergence, because you're right, the things that people can make in the computer and with microchips are like second only to like what you see outside. But I do think the visceral, like I get to go and experience the thing in person. I think people are going to want to do that more than sit on their couch and experience it. And that's where I think the next real big horizon is.
And I think that great stories, it always comes from a great story. And the reason reality is so popular is because nothing is as interesting as the unexpected surprise of what really happens. But I want to combine what both of you say. I think, and I agree with you, VR, the second I saw it, I was like, there's no way it's the most isolating thing I've ever seen. Plus it made me dizzy. But I think we're going to go digital, virtual to social. I think what the digital and virtual worlds are going to do is create new gathering spaces. I think there's going to be ways to have augmented reality closer to you. We're building an augmented reality studio for one of our projects. I think it's what people are really going to want, but I do think we have to stay away from the part that makes it dizzy. So I think there'll be a connection, some kind of social connection where you can have 10 or 15 people and view this story and share this experience.
For clarification, though, I was thinking virtual production, not virtual where you put the thing on and watch it. Like how we produce.
No, Karen, you can't walk back your answer.
That's clarification. It wasn't working, but you misunderstood. But I'm still going to your Van Gogh experience, and had I known I'd done this, I wouldn't have paid all the money for the VIP entrance. So
go get a refund and then call me.
Sorry.
I'm kidding.
No, you said it.
We'll edit that comment out and then let you.
Also note to Patrick, we will cancel our plans for the virtual reality version of the distillery. I think you guys, this has been really great. I want to keep an eye on time. We've had, it's been a big pleasure to have you all. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for being open. And for our audience watching, we don't want this conversation to end here. So we'll be putting up our stats and data and the Forbes article link so that you can chime in too. Please log on to the distillery.live and give us your thoughts.
Absolutely.
As far as our guests, thank you.
Absolutely. Karen, Nancy, David, thank you so much. We'll be putting links to their sites up on our site as well. So please log into thedistillery.live to participate in the poll and find out more about our guests. This is one of the most fun hours we've had in, 6 months.
In a week.
At least a week. Thanks guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. It was great. It's good to be back.
Bye.